What are some of the smartest ways to get what you want? Let's find out, starting with number 7, the Mugger of Hearts. A Brazilian woman who's only identified as Emanuela found herself in an unexpected tale of romance after an encounter with a mugger on the street. The strange story began when she became a victim of a robbery, but her mugger didn't only steal her phone, he also stole her heart. As the thief made away with Emanuela's phone, he stumbled upon her phone's contact list. Spotting Emanuela's number saved on the device, the thief made an unusual decision. He called her up and revealed that he was the one responsible for the robbery. He confessed that he was very lonely and that when he saw Emanuela's photo on the phone, deep regret washed over him. Or he thought she was hot. Seriously, how did she fall for this? The couple's unusual first date is now a memorable and often recounted story. The thief's confession led to an improbable connection between Emanuela and himself, turning a mugging into a tale of unlikely love. Since that fateful encounter, Emanuela and her mugger have been inseparable, forming a romantic relationship that has gone on for 2 years. Their love story captured the attention of social media with a Twitter video going viral. The relationship is supposedly unexpectedly strong, which may mean that he just graduated from mugging to kidnapping instead. Number 6, the Luggage Game. Pernell Anthony Jones Jr., a man from Kenner, Louisiana, orchestrated an elaborate scam that targeted several major U.S. airlines. Over the course of 5 years, Jones managed to make around $300,000 through 180 fake claims of lost luggage. Using a combination of fake IDs and preloaded gift cards, Jones booked commercial flights in and out of Louis Armstrong New Orleans International Airport. He avoided detection by using fake names and paying for the flights with gift cards. The heart of Jones's scam relied on exploiting the airlines' reimbursement policies. After making claims of lost luggage, he would provide the addresses of at least 7 of his friends to receive the reimbursement checks on his behalf. Jones also made sure to list expensive items in his fake lost luggage claims, ensuring that the total value reached the airline's maximum reimbursement limit of $3,500 for lost baggage. On some occasions, he didn't bring any luggage to the airport, yet still managed to obtain a ticket and proceeded to make his claims. However, what might have seemed like a smart and lucrative scam turned out to be his undoing. Jones frequently showed up at the lost and found or claims offices of various airlines, eventually catching the attention of airline staff. The airlines' fraud detection systems may have flagged his activities, ultimately leading to his downfall. And really, after 180 successful attempts, it sounds a little more like luck that he was caught. On the day of his arrest, Jones had 22 fake driver's licenses shipped from China. Pernell Anthony Jones Jr. ended up getting charged with mail fraud and conspiracy to commit mail fraud, which carries a potential punishment of up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. The scam was pretty clever, but why didn't he just go to other airports? Doesn't make sense. Maybe it would feel too much like work? Number 5, the secret recipe. Zhu, a Chinese college student, stumbled upon a glitch in KFC's online ordering system, unleashing a scheme that would land him and his friends behind bars. The ingenious scam was built around a loophole Zhu discovered while using a voucher from KFC's phone app. By alternating between the KFC app and the company's store on WeChat, China's popular messaging platform, Zhu realized he could place an order using the voucher, and the voucher would still be in his wallet on the other account. This allowed him to generate endless free food vouchers, which meant endless amounts of fried chicken skin, which is the only part anyone cares about. Over the span of 6 months, Zhu managed to claim 6,500 pounds worth of KFC chicken skin using the glitch. But Zhu, being a good dude, didn't keep this secret to himself. Sharing the wealth, Zhu introduced the loophole to 4 close friends who collectively indulged in the ill-gotten gains, racking up an additional 15,500 pounds worth of fried chicken skin. Unfortunately for the opportunistic chicken lovers, the chicken train ended when they were caught in the act. Facing the consequences of their fraudulent feast, Zhu, with his guilty plea, was sentenced to 2.5 years in jail, which was later reduced to a 2-year term, which sounds a bit much for a loophole that was the company's fault. As for his friends, they received sentences ranging from 13 to 30 months and were also slapped with fines ranging from 150 pounds to 900 pounds. When it comes down to it, Popeyes is better anyway. Shout out in the comments if you agree. Number 4, mail me my bags, quick! Anisha Anwar, A woman from London executed a fraud that left hotel staff bewildered and her richer by thousands. Anwar made a series of calls to a hotel in Hackney in the UK, posing as one of their guests. Anwar said there was a family crisis and that she and her family urgently needed to leave the hotel. Her act was so convincing that the hotel staff fell for the ruse hook, line, and sinker. So they started packing up belongings worth £80,000, including luxurious items from renowned brands. The smooth-talking fraudster then arranged for a licensed minicab to collect the pilfered bags. The cab was directed to Maryland Railway Station, where an associate of Anwar's awaited to take the loot. The actual guests returned to their room the following morning, only to discover the shocking theft and promptly reported it to the authorities. An investigation was launched and detectives managed to trace the movements of the cab and identify the driver. Through phone records, they were able to connect the crime to Anwar, who had a history of fraud. The evidence gathered through forensic techniques left no room for doubt, and Anwar was arrested. In court, she pleaded guilty to the charge of fraud by false representation. The conversation between the guests and the hotel must have been awkward when they discovered that not only is their room empty, but the hotel literally gave all their stuff away. All you'd hear is someone on the phone with management saying, "You what? You did what? Wait, what? What?" Number 3. Cleaning Arizona. Maria Saines and her family from Riverside, California, got a whopping $7.6 million by recycling tons of bottles and cans. The only problem was that they were transporting glass and aluminum cans from Arizona to California. Over an 8-month period, the Saines family cashed in on California's recycling program, which pays 5 to 10 cents per container. The Saines family brought a whopping 178 tons of recycling from Arizona to California. The problem was that only containers from within California were eligible for the reimbursement. It remains unclear how the Saines family managed to acquire such vast quantities of bottles and cans in Arizona, a state that doesn't have a cash for recycling program. Regardless, their scheme brought them a lot of money, amassing a colossal $7.6 million through recycling fraud. The magnitude of their operation was evident in the sheer volume of recyclables they accumulated over the 8-month period. Authorities noticed the family's activities and planned to take legal action against the recycling centers involved in the scheme. The California Attorney General's office, alongside with investigators from Cal Recycle, aimed to hold accountable not only the individuals, but also the centers that facilitated the recycling fraud. Maria Saines and her relatives face charges of fraud, grand theft, and conspiracy, and their potential punishments could be severe. However, the case raises the question of whether the Saines family's actions are really a scam at all. Despite exploiting the system, they did engage in recycling and removed a significant amount of waste from the environment. Maybe it's not the letter of the law, but the spirit? Number 2. The parking attendant. A con artist in Ohio pulled off a scam by posing as a parking lot attendant. Dressed in a fluorescent green vest and using traffic cones and a red flag, he looked like a legitimate parking attendant. But he wasn't. The scam took place just before a soccer match in Cincinnati, where he took advantage of the absence of the real parking staff who usually work at the lot. The scammer filled all 50 parking spaces and charged $40 per car, nearly double the usual $25 rate. In just a few hours, he raked in $2 grand. The victims, who thought they were paying for legitimate parking, had no idea they were being scammed. When the real staff eventually arrived, they confronted the imposter, called the cops, but he was long gone before they arrived. There's surveillance videos and dash cam footage, and authorities are on the lookout for him, but he is yet to be identified. Overall, the scam was fairly harmless. Victims did get their parking, and they were only gouged an extra $15, which really isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, the parking lot guys lost out on nights of sales, but it doesn't seem like it was a devastating loss. However, parking lot was located next to a food bank, which normally receives a significant portion of the parking proceeds as a donation. They said that the scammer cost them around $1,600. According to the CEO of Food Store Food Bank, Kurt Reiber, the money would have been used to feed around 5,000 hungry local kids. Reiber is now urging the scammer to do the right thing and donate all the money he made back to the charity. He also wants the guy to turn himself in to face charges of grand theft, which, okay, give the money back, or at least some of it. That sounds like a reasonable ask. Maybe the guy didn't know he was stealing from a charity, but then Reiber thinks the guy that just stole a bunch of money is also going to turn himself in and face charges. The first request was already pretty unlikely as it was, Kurt. You might be aiming a little high here, asking a guy without morals to do the right thing. If you're enjoying this video, then be sure to stay tuned right on this video to find out how he came up with the perfect way to rob a bank. Number 1. Begging for treats. In Bangkok, Thailand, a sinister dog named Guy has mastered the art of running a manipulative scam. The dog learned that pretending his leg is injured is the perfect way to get attention. By attention, we mean treats. Treats that don't belong to him. When Guy spotted his targets approaching, he would drag his back left leg along the ground, pretending he had a painful injury. Concerned pedestrians quickly gathered around him, offering sympathy and treats. Guess which one this scammer cared more about. But once the crowd grew, Guy would hop up and run away, wagging his tail in some sort of weird mockery of his victims, confusing the crowd. In a video, a man on a motorcycle, genuinely concerned for the dog's well-being, stopped to check on him. As soon as the man caught on to the dog's act, he started laughing, showing just how convincing Guy's scam was. Guy's scam is so smooth, his victims actually laugh when they realize they've been scammed. Guy found a group of victims he could easily manipulate among the locals, who affectionately called him Guyby. He tricked them into taking care of him and providing him with food and a safe place to sleep, which sounds a lot like a cat, now that we think about it. One of Guy's victims is a dog lover, and Guy has tricked her into feeding him regularly. She said that there's absolutely nothing wrong with Guy and that both of his legs are perfectly healthy, exposing his scam, but for some reason, she still takes care of him, like some sort of Stockholm syndrome. If Guy were ever injured, she said he would receive immediate veterinary care, really showing how deep Guy's cold-hearted manipulation goes. We really have no idea how many victims of Guys there are, because no one wants to admit to being scammed by a dog. Of course, we're just kidding. Dogs pretty much can do no wrong, and we'd probably end up with a whole bag of treats if we came across them. 4 days before his passing, Thomas Randall's family learned his big secret. He was wanted by the U.S. Marshals for robbing a bank in 1969. Just like how any family would be. They were in shock. It all started with a Steve McQueen movie. Thomas was born in Cleveland, Ohio. He grew up in the 50s and late 60s, idolizing cool, big-screen actors like James Dean and Marlon Brando. Of course, Dean and Brando often portrayed morally gray characters doing somewhat immoral things. But none of these characters had the same effect as Steve McQueen's character in The Thomas Crown Effect. The film is about a billionaire named Thomas Crown who steals $20 million from a bank in Boston. It came out when our Thomas was 19 years old. He watched one of his idols live out the romantic life of a bank robber. Thomas Crown lived in Boston, a more well-known city than Cleveland, Ohio, where Randall lived. But Steve McQueen's Thomas wasn't cool because of where he lived or what he did. He was cool for how he did it, which was why Thomas idolized the character in real life. Thomas Crown didn't steal because he needed the money. He stole for fun. He treated it like a game. Randall saw him play bank robber on the big screen and wanted to play too. He wanted to be like Steve McQueen. He wanted to know what it felt like to pull off a heist. However, Thomas needed to take baby steps and work his way up to professional bank robber. If he wanted to be like McQueen's character, he'd have to start acting, dressing, and drinking like him too. According to the U.S. Marshals report from 1969, Thomas drove an MG sports car, sipped expensive gin, and showed off his prowess for golf and billiards. When he turned 20, Thomas got a job as a low-level bank worker. Everyone expects a bank robber to be a gun-toting masked criminal waving a burlap bag at whimpering employees. Thomas knew he could not recreate the Steve McQueen heist. Instead, Thomas's plan was to rob the bank from the inside. His job made the heist like stealing candy from a baby, or, in this case, stealing money right out of the vault. When the tellers needed more money and they're registered, Thomas's job was to go into the vault and get it. So if someone saw him pillaging through the bank vault, they wouldn't ask any questions. As far as they knew, Thomas was just doing his job. Thomas bragged to his friends about how easy it would be to rob a bank. Of course, they thought his claims were outlandish and borderline delusional. Most heists ended badly for the heistee after all. They probably assumed Thomas was all talk, but he wasn't. On a lovely morning in 1969, Thomas Randall, known then as Theodore Conrad, walked into the Society National Bank of Cleveland and only a few minutes later walked out with $215,000 in a brown paper bag. He also had a carton of cigarettes and a bottle of whiskey in true McQueen fashion. According to bank records, Thomas divided the money carefully. He took 1,500 $100 bills, 1,200 $50 bills, and 250 20s. Today, Thomas's payload would be worth around $1.7 million. The bank didn't even notice they were missing any funds until Monday when Thomas didn't show up for work in the morning. They soon discovered he was missing, along with $215,000. They alerted the U.S. Marshals, who launched a manhunt for young Theo. His face was plastered in newspapers all around Ohio. The FBI even put him on the most wanted list, where he would appear quite frequently as dozens of law agencies across the country searched for him. Some people thought Theo, now Thomas, fled to 3 likely locations: California, Paris, and Hawaii. However, none of these locations were proven by law enforcement. They were just false alarm sightings of Thomas. One Ohio couple thought they saw him in Hawaii 3 months after the heist. They told police that they were sitting at a tiki bar in the Princess Kailani Hotel on Waikiki Beach when they had a strange encounter with a fellow guest. The couple was relaxing and trying to enjoy their vacation, so they began chatting with a man at the bar. A few minutes into their conversation, the couple mentioned Cleveland, Ohio. Suddenly, the man's attitude changed. He excused himself to use the bathroom and never came back. Not long after meeting the strange man, the Cleveland couple saw a picture of Thomas in the papers. They called the police, telling authorities they had seen the wanted bank robber at their hotel only a couple days ago, although he probably wasn't still in the bathroom. The local authorities in Waikiki searched everywhere for the man at the bar. Eventually, they got a lead at an apartment complex near the hotel, but the man had left already. The landlord said the man paid with cash, which of course, the police couldn't trace. They still aren't 100% sure if that was Thomas or just someone who resembled him. So where did Thomas go? What kind of life did he lead as a wanted man? The incident in Hawaii was the only lead U.S. Marshals would find on Thomas's location for decades. They still believe he was there, but escaped and went back to the United States mainland. After the Hawaii sighting, the Marshals received more tips from all around the U.S. One came in from Washington, D.C., another came from Inglewood, California. The Marshals even got a call from Oregon saying they'd seen Thomas. He apparently showed up in the picturesque outlaw country of West Texas. If the Marshals got a call, they dropped everything and went to that location. However, they never once stopped to check the city Thomas was actually living in, the city where he spent 30 years hiding from authorities: Boston. It made sense, though. The Thomas Crown affair was filmed in Boston, and Randall even lived a few blocks away from the filming location. He could probably sense McQueen's presence. Thomas did hop around a bit, but eventually he settled down in the Boston area. He started a family, built a career, and became a well-liked member of his suburban community. The man in the proverbial wanted posters was Theodore Conrad, the audacious bank robber. He changed his name to Thomas Randall, who, by contrast, was an innocent suburbanite who lived a remarkable life. Thomas quickly realized that he couldn't live off his heist money forever. As he started running out of cash, he searched for work in the area. He didn't find anything substantial. He must have known where people were looking for him, because Thomas went to one of the few regions U.S. Marshals didn't: Florida. He found work in the prestigious Pembroke Country Club. He started off as a golf instructor and worked his way up to teaching pro. Yes, Thomas was technically a pro golfer. He held the secondary, but still esteemed, title of assistant golf pro. Thomas played in the Winter Tour for 1 year. He retired early to a comfortable management position at Pembroke, where he earned a steady salary for several years. According to his wife and children, Thomas genuinely loved golf. Becoming a pro golfer probably wasn't the best career choice for one of the most wanted men in America, but it was worth the risk. After all, what would Thomas Crown do? Randall eventually quit his job at Pembroke and pursued his other McQueen-inspired passion: cars. Thomas retired from golf in the 70s and stayed in Boston full-time, where he started a luxury car dealership. He named the business Woburn Foreign Motors. Through Woburn, Thomas sold all kinds of vehicles, but he especially loved working on and selling Range Rovers and Volvos. He spent nearly 40 years in the car business until his forced retirement in 2021. Cancer forced him to hang it up, a disease that plagued the last few years of Thomas's life. Thomas spent those years caring for his wife, Kathy, and his daughter, Ashley. Of course, they were still blissfully unaware of their father and husband's criminal past. They only knew Thomas Randall, not the wanted bank robber, Theodore Conrad. Thomas was a car salesman who loved to cook for his family. He'd spend hours in the kitchen experimenting with new recipes. When the family of 3 sat down for dinner, he'd always ask them if he should make the dish again. Unfortunately, and somewhat ironically, Thomas was not good with money. In 2014, he filed for bankruptcy. And by the time he passed away in 2021, Thomas was flat broke. His family could never have imagined their loving family man was once rich in stolen bank money. That was until he told them the truth. Thomas revealed his 1969 bank heist 4 days before he passed away. His family chose to admit the crime from his obituary. Of course, that didn't stop the news from getting out. The U.S. Marshals released their findings in a public report, which finally closed the case that had gone unsolved for over 50 years and was led by 2 generations of marshals. U.S. Marshal John K. Elliott nearly spent his entire life looking for Thomas. In 1969, Elliott was a marshal in Cleveland and was the first person the bank called when they discovered the robbery. Elliott chased every lead he could get, but as we now know, those leads were just the breadcrumbs of a wild goose chase. Elliot started on the case in 1969 and hunted Thomas until 1990. However, Elliot's son, Peter J. Elliot, says his father never stopped searching for Thomas. After his retirement, Peter says he remembers his father keeping up with any leads the U.S. Marshals had on Thomas. He even investigated some leads himself. Peter recalls his father telling him how Thomas, or Theodore as he knew him, was the one fugitive who got away. Elliot passed away in 2020, 1 year before Thomas confessed his crimes. So unfortunately, Elliot never got closure on the case that spanned his entire career and life. Before Elliot died, however, the U.S. Marshals, currently on Thomas's case, shared some news with the retiree. They were getting close to finding Thomas. They told Elliot they'd found a connection between 2 documents in Thomas's name. Peter was the marshal leading the investigation and remembers telling his father the news personally. The news also came with a word of thanks. Elliot had compiled most of the research used in the Conrad investigation, including a document signed by Thomas Randall. The signature on the pre-69 document was compared to the signature on a more recent version. Marshals compared the T in Thomas and Theodore and determined the same hand must have written both signatures. It took Peter and his team about a year to make the connection. By that point, Thomas was already on his deathbed and he'd confessed to the crime. Arresting Thomas would have been pointless. Peter knows his dad will rest easier knowing they found him regardless of whether or not Thomas was prosecuted. Thomas Randall lived the life he always dreamed of before passing away on May 18, 2021. Who could ask for anything more? Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section whether or not you'd ever date someone that tried to mug you.